one of the big insurance companies essentially sued my dental society, and so my dental society, like their like leadership was named, and it was completely like, you're colluding, you're monopolizing. So the dentist in my town basically got the dental society shut down for like 2 or 3 years in the mid 80s.
All right, so today, Alex, we're actually bringing on a guest that was actually our first guest.
Okay.
And then because he was our first guest, we found out after the fact that we had audio and some technical issues, which I think is just learning on the fly about stuff because we know nothing about podcasting.
I guess so. So not like a repeat guest. We're redoing this.
Yeah.
We're,
round two.
Yeah, round two.
Take two.
So like, like in the movies when you have to like have the actor come back for like reshoots.
Oh yeah,
like,
this is what this is.
This is kind of it, but like the continuity part, like I was probably pregnant at the time.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. So this is like going to be completely out of sorts.
Yes, this is. I guess that's funny. This is reshoots.
Yeah, these are reshoots. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But we totally changed the script.
Yeah.
And there was like a whole new thing, and new.
It's all different.
It's a whole thing. New director.
Whole new movie.
Yeah. Let's see how this goes.
So we have Erik Zundo's coming on, or Dr. Erik Zundo. I found out I tend to do that. I tend to forget to put the doctor in front of all of our guest names. But Dr. Erik Zundo, he was our class president, right? So we've known him for a long time, and he stayed after we graduated in Indiana. He stayed in Indiana in like West Lafayette area where like Purdue is, and so he's been there, I believe, ever since, right, Erik?
Yep, ever since. Yep, 2013.
Nice.
Cool.
Yeah, I know, that's crazy. It's past 10 years of graduating.
Yeah.
I know.
Congrats.
Yeah. Thanks for doing round 2 with us today.
No problem.
You sound great.
I hope so.
Hopefully.
All right, so what are we talking about today?
So I think the one piece that Erik has a lot more knowledge in than I do, especially, or probably even you, is like organized dentistry, right? Like I feel like I see it a lot in certain Facebook groups, right? I get tagged, I think, daily, like, everyone pay attention to this, like the world's gonna end because of this, this, and this. And so I'm like, this must be huge, this must be a big thing, or just that person thinks it is. But it kind of got me thinking, like, I don't know much about this, and I feel like a lot of dentists, or even probably younger dentists in the younger generation, are kind of out of organized dentistry in the same.
So we're talking like ADA.
Yeah, ADA, your local state, chapter of that, all that kind of stuff. I feel like that was like such a big thing, probably the generation, I guess, but was it ahead or behind us, our parents' age, right? Mm-hmm. I feel like everyone was like, you join the ADA, right? That was just a thing. And now it's kind of like, okay, well, when my student dues then that's it, I'm not going to renew or anything like that. It just doesn't feel like it has the same popularity that it used to.
Well, yeah. I agree. I mean, I'm not part of the ADA.
No, I'm not.
I don't.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm not a member of any of it, and I don't know if I should be.
Yeah,
I feel guilty of like,
I think that's the big thing. It's like, should we be?
Yeah.
And what does it do? I mean, I think there's a lot of misinformation and just not enough information out there to give us a good, way to think about it.
Yeah, and then I think we hear too, either through the grapevine or on forums and stuff like that, like, oh, well, like the groups like the ADA, they're doing this and this and this, and this is why they stink and stuff. So then I think that kind of information comes out, and then you get people who are on those forums being like, oh, well, then I don't want to join, right? Like, sometimes I think that affects me without me actually vetting if it's true or not. So we figured we could have Erik on, and he could help kind of us with some of these things that we've seen or heard of, and maybe by the end we'll be writing a check to the ADA. Who knows?
Right. No. Oh gosh. Yeah.
But yeah.
And that's the hard part.
Yeah. So like the first question I kind of had for you, you brought this one up, Alex. Mm-hmm. So why don't you ask it that way?
The membership one?
No, the whole like Delta thing.
Well, I think okay. So I've heard, because I'm not well versed in this either. So I was looking through, comments on ADA and stuff like that, and I think one of the bigger topics has been this alliance / non-alliance with Delta. It's like this love-hate with it. is the ADA teamed up with Delta? Because we've heard this like partnership with Delta, but then at the same time, there's this lawsuit going on with Delta. So I don't know what's going on. I was reading through like 50, 100 comments, and like no one knows what's going on. Everyone has their own opinion about it. I don't know if you kind of know a little bit more behind the scenes.
As far as that never ending love hate relationship, it's mostly just hate between dentists and insurance companies. We all know that the insurance companies will pull tricks and try to do things to kind of basically prevent them from having to reimburse. And it's just, that's business, because every time they say no, they make profit. But there are some other ways that they can kind of encroach in what we call antitrust, which is basically monopoly. So where they can kind of section off parts of the regions and states and then go into kind of, manipulate those markets at a regional and local level. And so California, I think, teed something up for the ADA to jump on. And obviously these kinds of cases take forever. So right now it's kind of like discovery mode is still going on, where both sides get to essentially go find as much data to support. And then I don't think anything's going to even kick off until 2025. So this takes years, because these are large federal
And so
cases.
just so we know, this is the state of California trying to sue Delta Dental, and then they're asking the ADA to come to bat for them.
It's not the state; it's just the CDA, California Dental Association.
Oh, okay,
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah. And we can kind of do a little dive on certain things, but the big component of this was that the ADA is basically is suing and bringing this forward. And you kind of talk about fair practices, and how the ADA in general is trying to essentially kind of set things a little bit more straight, so they can stop manipulating, and we can actually get fair reimbursement, timely reimbursement, but also just more competition in the market, because some of these big dogs, MetLife, Cigna, Delta, they hold the whole all that control, and then they'll do certain things like tell dentists like, well, we're not going to honor this fee schedule if you go in network with somebody else.
They've threatened. I don't know if threatened is a strong word, but they've like advised or told us like, if you drop this and do this, then we won't. They've done stuff like that, or try to, right? And that's kind of scary. Luckily in Colorado, at least for now, which I know in some states it's different with Delta, we can go Premier very easily. It's just like an email, and you can go from PPO to Premier. So you end up getting like decent reimbursements for it. But I think it was like, isn't it Washington or some states, they kind of got rid of it where you could get, if you were in Premier, you can stay.
Because in California, I was able to get grandfathered in to the Premier, and I'm like, I'm not dropping this, because as soon as you drop it, then you lose it forever.
Well, yeah, and it just seems like one of those things, like when something,
what is that?
When something's so complicated like that, it's like, they're doing, like, they're just doing that on purpose.
Yeah.
Well, and it's that manipulation, like dentists, we see it all the time. They're like, you'll do a pre-treatment estimate and they prove it, and then it's like, well, this isn't binding, and it's like, what? Delay tactics, or we need you to say, I've got a patient, she basically needs veneers, or she wants veneers, but of course she wants us to put in the pre-treatment estimate, which they're not going to pay anything, so they're like, okay, well, we need you to send a complete series of x-rays and a pano, and it's like, they're just kicking the can down the road. I mean, it's all stupid semantics.
What was one? I feel like we had some at our office, some really weird reason for a denial. It was something crazy, like for an extraction, they were like, you need to send like an x-ray, you needed to send something that like, you're like, I've never had to send it. Like I get sending like a PA for a crown, or sending it like an x-ray beforehand, or like it's within the year and stuff, but it was something really random, whereas like, or they wanted like an intraoral picture of the tooth before you took it out, like something ridiculous like that, and you're like, okay, so now there's a point where like they don't trust the dentist at all, and they just must think, do they think every dentist is just like trying to commit fraud all the time, and they need all, like, it's ridiculous.
Right. Well, and the hard part is if you do sign those contracts, they are incredibly stringent. And some are known for like, well, they won't negotiate with fees. They'll do things like, if you sign up with this, then you have to give all those things. And if you don't give all those things, then you are not going to get it approved. And I'm completely out of network. I can't say I'm fee for service because I will still file all the paperwork for the patients. And most patients get to leave my practice without necessarily paying the full fee that day. But I sit there and I watch, so I don't know who's reviewing half this stuff. And it's like you're making a clinical diagnosis without ever examining the patient. You don't know anything. I mean, you can say, well, we need the probing test, we need the radiograph. And it's like, well, there's recurrent decay on the buccal. You cannot see it on my bite wing, so what are you going to do now? If you have to then escalate and escalate and escalate, that's part of that administrative bloat that is absolute trash. It's like the state of Indiana gives me a dental license and it grants me the power and the privilege to treat and diagnose. Why are the dental insurance companies coming in and overriding that? And so that's a frustrating thing for me because it's like they're practicing without a license, and so we think about all the other things that come into this. There are so many things that are wrong, but it's a slow slide that we keep sliding on. And I think a fun fact is my West Central Dental Society in Indiana, back in the 80s, the insurance companies started requesting radiographs. They started requesting the films to be mailed for review. And the old schoolers in my neck of the woods flipped out. They're like, this is not happening. You're not coming into my kitchen.
Just a general audit. Like it wasn't. It was just send X-rays for every patient, or they would say, hey, like
correct.
With the claim,
it was basically with the claim. We need you to give us the X-ray of the tooth that you treated, and like physically mail it. And so the old crew here in the middle of Indiana in the 80s, they got together and they said, don't do this. Don't give in to this slip. And one of the I think it might have been one of the big insurance companies essentially sued my dental society. And yes, and so my dental society like their like leadership was named, and it was completely like, you're colluding, you're monopolizing. So the dentist in my town basically got the dental society shut down for like 2 or 3 years in the mid 80s. Yeah. And I got to this area and I heard somebody mention it. I was like, wait, what? And you can go look it up. It's a case. And I can't remember. It was like in 1984 maybe. But, some of these dudes that were running this were like, they went to dental school in the 50s and they're like, you're not going to tell me what to do,
Yeah. Wow, I did not know that. That's
So
crazy.
anyway,
definitely
So then-
a power struggle.
Yeah.
there.
So then, because going back to that part though, with like, and we use like Delta as the example with the lawsuit in California and stuff, but isn't the ADA still kind of in bed with Delta too? Like, don't they do stuff together? There's partnerships and stuff. So like, it just seems like a big mess.
Yeah.
So Delta, there's the overriding the mothership, the Delta Dental Plan Administrators is kind of this all-encompassing name, and then there are all these other like Delta Dental of Indiana or Michigan, whatever, and so they're marketing, they're a marketing. That's all they are, is they're selling a product, and I'm not the buyer. It's the companies that want to use their services or the individuals who want to buy those. So that's why you see at a hockey game, Delta Dental sponsors, the scoreboard or whatever. And so we've noticed, obviously, the dental schools are getting some cash, and the Delta gets to write that off against their income, and they can then say, hey, we're good people, we're trying to help, we're trying to improve things. And we talk about what they spend money on. It's like, well, it's all marketing. And so then the problem is you got the ADA, who's long time been a staunch supporter of helping dentists get their CE, get their licensure stuff set up, fight essentially legislatively over the years. Now we're starting to see that the ADA is also now cozying up with Delta. Delta's reaching out and they're making buddies. And so when we think about the relationship between the ADA and Delta, we always kind of question those things and think, if you're showing up to certain events or you're co-sponsoring things, what's the reasoning? What's in it? Because Delta has an angle. Their entire company is made of statistics. They are not leaving anything to a chance and a good feeling. It's all for the forecast. If they look at their 5 to 10 to 20-year forecast, every bit of detail, every bit of data, every bit of, every dollar and dime is accounted for. And so when you see the ADA reaching out and or kind of acknowledging of any type of partnership, it doesn't matter what it's for. I understand that we like to think of charities as these things that, that are done from the good of the heart, but it's like, if anybody here who's listening has practiced and gotten an odd letter from an insurance company, it's like, they're not in it. They're not helping. They're not in it for the patient. They're in it for themselves. There's nothing that is benevolent. And so for everybody who's on the fence about, well, wait, what is the ADA doing? Well, they're not helping legislation as effectively as they could. And they jump in and say, well, in Massachusetts, the ADA helped pay for the DLR passage about a year and a half ago. And it's like, well, okay, they did, but they also knew that within the Massachusetts Dental Association, there was internal funding that got that there. And when they knew that they had a chance to get the referendum passed, then the ADA jumped in and was like, hey, let's definitely support this. And so you see it's like right. It was like, well, you're rounding turn 4 and they knew that they were in the lead. So is this kind of, but it's hard because then from a membership side of things, we have the tripartite. You can't just join your local dental society. You can't just join your state. And so it gets really frustrating because all the things that we don't like, we start to see Delta doing more of it. The ADA doing more of it. As far as legislatively, the manipulative things, like, each state has its own power. And so my take is, I don't really put a whole lot of faith that the ADA is always going to be helpful to me personally, but at the state level, that's where we all have impact more than we think. When you think about government affairs, you have liaisons that are there to essentially be the lobbyists for, your state's dental association. There is a government affairs committee, so you can reach out to those people. And those things do need support because that's really where impact happens at the state level, where they can regulate things at a regional level, and you're not trying to push something across all 50 states, which is much harder to get into passage. So, I've spoken to people who are in New York. That's hard. There are tons of dentists in New York, California, same thing. Those networks of leadership are harder to get into and harder to impact personally. But I still think that's where the power is. And so when I see that the dental school has teamed up with Delta to sponsor something, it's like, doesn't make me feel great, because there's a reason they're doing it. They're trying to normalize their name and its marketing and get people used to the idea of being friends with Delta.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. I don't know, it just sits with me the wrong way.
Yeah.
And it's like, if ADA is getting any kind of funding and stuff from Delta, are they just like giving it back to the lawyers to sue them? Like, it just doesn't seem like a smart play. I don't know, that's just my thought. But I mean, another question I had too, that when I was doing a little bit of research, was like, a lot of people ask, do I need to renew my ADA membership, or do I need to do this? And tons of answers are like, yes, no, maybe. Like, no one knows.
So I think
there's
so much like unclearness. That's a new word. I guess that's my word of the day. On like, because I don't understand it. I don't think you do, Alex. Like, I feel like there's not a lot of I don't know if transparency is the right word, but like on what my dues are going towards, right? And
because like, we obviously know, like, ADA has something obviously to do with our codes, our dental codes. Okay, so that's something, I guess.
I would assume they help like get schools credentialed and like some of that stuff, and
have maybe some kind of like standards for stuff for like.
we're talking so like this just shows you we're just like throwing shit at the wall. Like, I think they do this.
I'm sure
I think
they do this.
So yeah, I think that just shows that there's not really like, and I don't know if then the ADA needs to be more active on platforms that people are using more now, but there just isn't. I feel like there's no clarity on like what stuff goes towards. And then when you don't know something, then your mind fills in the gaps, and you're like, well, then I guess they don't do anything. And then you're like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah, or the things that they do show on like or Facebook and platforms and stuff is like boring stuff. It's like, what, this doesn't affect me or a lot of people. Maybe it affects one person. It's like, well, like, I don't care about that, you know. So I don't know.
Well, it was really hard. I don't know if you were aware of this interaction that there was on a Facebook forum. It might have been, well, I can't remember which one, but it was basically the previous president of the ADA hopped on and tried to like calm the villagers, and it went really bad. She was so basically everybody's like, what are we doing? What's going on here? Why aren't we, getting this DLR nationally passed, and the dental loss ratio, and what is the ADA spending their money on? Like, what's going on? And so she came out and she's like, well, have you know that we work on testing. We test the materials for patient safety. And I'm like, well, why is, I mean, like most people go to Gordon Christensen and say, hey, does this stuff work? You know, like, and so then the ADA then bought the Forsyth Institute, which was this huge, dental researching. And I was like, and I made a comment to her and I said, well, I would assume that this research is break even or profit generating. Don't tell me this is a cost center. Don't tell me my dues are going to prove that a resin works for all the dentists. Like, no. Yeah, let somebody else do the research. Why is this on us? And it's like, yeah, I don't know, what was the one of the ceramics that was put out, and it was an absolute failure. And it's like, yeah, but that got through the cracks, 20 years ago, and everybody was using it until they found out it just shattered all the time. And it's like, don't tell me that my dues are there to make the entire community better if the entire community is not paying for this stuff. If every single dentist was forced to be a member of the ADA and was all paying dues, I get it. Then we're covering it for everybody that's a dentist. But this should not be a cost center for my dues. And so she went into all these things, and it's like, yeah, and then you get these. One of the most frustrating things that's been recently is one of the researchers there was talking about the concept of value-based care. And value-based care means basically make the patients do a better job at home. That's it.
Oh, okay.
It's
So
like,
is value-based care basically saying the dentist gets paid from insurance or whatever
to keep them healthy,
the healthier their patients are?
Correct. And it's like, and that's of course the $10 version of it. But yes, basically, like, how, like, sometimes I'll tell a patient, I'm like, hey, we got you twice a year, but you've got the other 363 days. You're in control. Instead of a service, they're looking at this concept of, well, how do we just make it so that we have more incentive to get the patient to brush? It's like, well, I do that every day. I educate every day patients. Hey, here's a strategy. Try this, do that. But if you start saying that I'm not getting paid for, the service, then we're in serious trouble, because that's how dentists work.
Okay, didn't something similar to that happen? I know, like, my uncle's a teacher, and I remember him complaining or bitching about it like years ago, because I think in some either states or school districts, weren't they like
paid or bonus?
It was either paid or bonus, or like how they were ranked, or like, was based on like test scores. And it's like, but I see the kid from 8 to 3, like, I'm not their parent, so like if they don't, like, I can't force them to do that. Why am I getting
compensated?
Yeah, or not even compensated, but why is my, like, how you guys are measuring my effectiveness is based on things that are out of my control. And so that doesn't work. Hey, quick break here. If you're enjoying Just a Couple Dentists, don't forget to follow or subscribe wherever you're listening. It's the best way to keep up with new episodes and hear us argue about dumb stuff and complain about dentistry. And trust me, you don't want to miss that. Now back to the show.
Well, and so if you boil this down, you say, well, okay, if you did implement something like value-based care, guess what's going to happen? The opposite effect is going to happen. Your hope is that what you're doing is making a community healthier. The reality is you're going to get a whole lot of dentists who are not going to be going to certain socioeconomic areas. And they're going to say, I'm not going there because I can't control what they're eating at home. They're not getting a good diet. I can't be their parent. I would love to be everybody's parent. I would love to take care of every single kid in this country. But it's like, if you start saying that you're going to only compensate based on the health of the final outcome, or the lack of need for care, it's not going to go
Totally
well,
backfire.
and it's going to go the opposite
It's
direction.
like if we thought back in the day when we bought that first practice that Orange County was saturated with dentists, it's like just fourfold that. It'll just be like, you know, everyone's going to go there. That totally makes sense.
Yeah.
So like it'll actually,
satisfaction, 100%.
Yeah, it'll destroy the, I guess, access to care problem. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean, just these larger concepts, it's just super frustrating because then you have the next question we were talking about was, are we supposed to join or are we boycotting right now? What mood are we in this week? And the short answer is we do not have an alternative. We don't have, maybe we could all join the AGD and then change their mechanisms to then become a legislative weapon. But at the moment, we don't have an alternative for collective influence at all. And that's the hard part. So and I think people are doing that. People are organizing, and I think this is a good moment here because when we think about the DSO component, there are some people who are incredibly hardlined against DSOs. I don't really have my competition as DSOs, so I don't really have a bigger issue or larger concern. But some people think, well, the ADA needs to get away from them too. And quit giving them credence in a sense, like the big dogs. But the problem is even at the state level, in the national level, the ADA needs membership, and they're not going about it in a very smart way.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because even
if you told me, go ahead.
No, because even other ways of like potentially getting more money is you had found out, well, not found out, but like it's listed on who ADA invests in company wise. Right?
Yeah, so I thought I thought this was kind of interesting too. Like in the last couple of years, they invested in, which a lot of us know, like Overjet, which is similar to Pearl, which is like AI radiographs, right? Or it's using AI to like interpret radiographs and help the dentist make better diagnosis, right? Supposedly, right? Which it's fine. I think it's a good technology. So cool. And then in like oral genome too, which is all like salivary testing. So like that stuff is good for. I think conceptually those are both good, but is there like conflicts of interest there because now you have the ADA investing in tech companies, which now they have influence to potentially get insurance companies to approve certain things, which now they're invested in that company, so it helps them out more? Like, are they almost saying like, we don't have as many members now, so we have to look for different revenue streams. Let's become like a VC fund and like invest in stuff, So
I think the current president, Brett Kessler, addressed this very direct question of Overjet AI, because it was like, wait a minute, is the ADA now giving it their approval? Do they like Overjet but they hate Pearl? It's like, did they approve this toothbrush but not that toothbrush? It's more for them. It's just a cold hard investment, and they do have obviously influence based on how much money they're into it. But I don't think it's anything more complex yet. But that door is open, so it's like maybe in the future it will be. But, I think President Kessler had pretty squarely just said, hey, we just know strategically it was a good investment. And so, yeah, the hard thing on that is the whole idea of the membership hit. And like even at my state level, we have peer review. I don't know if you guys have peer review in Colorado.
I think we do. It's quiet.
I got quiet.
Yeah, well,
I would think so. I think we do.
Cool.
I'm like 50.
Yeah.
Well, it costs money to have somebody sort through all these things in my state. So I'm on the board for peer review, and we all do an annual calibration. But this gentleman, Ed, who's been with the IDA, the Indiana Dental Association, for a long time, this was a different meeting. It was kind of like we were discussing, okay, do we charge non-IDA members a little small fee if they get, brought before peer review? Because ultimately people can reject peer review and just say, hey, I got a lawyer, go talk to them. But peer review is there to basically take the workload off our state attorney general's office. And so, these small things that the state, does to help protect and help mediate situations. If a patient's, if you're quarreling over a $3,000, denture, set of dentures or upper or lower, whatever, the last thing you want to do is get out $12,000 for an attorney. So these small things, these small benefits, but like I think at my state level, we don't do a good job of packaging those wins. We don't do a good job of saying, hey, if you need membership, guess what you can do? Talk about the next legislative cycle. What are we going to do to make it so that, we hold insurance companies to their pre-authorization? You want to get dentists to sign up real quick, say, hey, we're going to go to bat. We're going to start taking away all these shenanigans at the state level, and at the state level, we can get those things passed,
Yeah.
Totally.
And so,
So I mean, like, okay, so let's just do like a fun scenario, just because it's so topical right now of like Elon Musk going in and like making the government efficient, right, with his DOGE stuff. You kind of touched in on some of that stuff, Eric, and so like if you were in that role and you create and you had like full reign to go in and just either gut it or do it how you would want to do it, like what would you do?
so it depends what angle you're starting from. In the perspective of from the patient's point of view, meaning if you want to make it more efficient from the patient's point of view, then you would want to have quicker access to care. What are the things that slow us down? Well, it's the bureaucracy and the paperwork of sending in the pre-auth, sending in this thing, finding the dentist. I laughed about this where why do we have a website where you go search for your dental care provider and then find out those dentists aren't even in the area anymore, or only 30 of the 92 listed have even stepped foot in this county? There are such silly, sticky things that are almost, they're not a bug, they're a feature of delaying care and access to care and paying for
We
care.
still had, so like a personal story on this is, and it's more like big government one, but with like using Medicaid, right? When we first opened our practices, we took that for a bit and then dropped it. But we're still like, I've called them like 4 or 5 times and like, hey, we haven't been with Medicaid for 2 years now. Can you please remove us from your website because we don't want patients to, access, like it's a waste of patients' time. And then they get confused and then they're probably gonna be like, I don't want to get care now, right? Because it's like this whole thing's confusing. Right. I think you are still listed your office as like a Medicaid provider, and it's been like 3+ years, and we've had tons of calls with them, and it always ends with, yeah, we'll get that done. And then they just drop the phone and then no, they don't follow up. And so that is a huge problem.
Well, and I don't, and you also have a situation where you have your staff sitting there verifying insurance. That's administrative bloat. That's absolute trash. Why are you? Because the insurance companies love it. Because then you are burdened with the task. No, the person who owns the policy should have a quick, just go on a website, find out, can I go to this office? This idea that we can't update a website like it's 1995 is absurd, and I don't buy it. It's window dressing. It's just again, it's not a bug. It's a feature for the insurance companies. You think about a big problem. The state of Illinois' payments for their government insurance is so delayed. Especially if you have what maybe 2 policy holders in the house, one has the secondary insurance and one has the primary. Guess what? The Illinois is so delayed on paying those things. There's no way you're going to hit the window of 90 days to submit or whatever it is, the secondary insurance. So these dentists are submitting the primary and it's taking 12 to 18 months to get payment. And then they're going back and filing the secondary, and the secondary is not paying. And it's just like, come on.
Yeah, it's just these games that they play. And they obviously do it on purpose because they can, right?
Well, yeah, because then like Eric was saying, it just puts it back. It's like, how do we deflect work and then the problem away from us? So like you said, with all that, it's now the second that the dentist office is verifying insurance, who does the patient think is responsible for their insurance? The dentist, right? So like it's
that's where all the conflict comes from. It's like, oh, why did this get denied? Why is this? And it's all back on us.
Like there really shouldn't be. There should not be a scenario then where like someone leaves a 1-star review because of insurance anymore. It should be an easy portal. They know what it is beforehand. If it was transparent and it was all there, it's not that. This isn't like a hard thing to do. It is literally coverage or not coverage, and then percentages. Yeah. And what's your maximum? Like we're talking like 6 numbers. Like, this isn't.
Maybe we created like a wristband or something. You just like scan it in.
Yeah.
So, like, make it fun. Like, I think someone just needs to do something like that. Like, just completely turn it into like fun Disney type of.
You scan your thing and it's like you have $1,500 left in benefits this year. And
here I need to get 2 fillings done. Click click, and then it's like.
What was that movie with Justin Timberlake? You know, it had Out of Time, when he had like the code on his wrist of the time he has left on Earth or whatever before he dies.
That's a good movie.
That's a good one.
Just like whatever it is, you know. So you know, another thing is like that whole pre-authorization concept. It's like no, it's a quick fix. It's make it binding. Make the pre-authorization binding for 180 days.
Yeah. What we do is we just don't usually do it. We don't do it.
Well, yeah, and then people don't.
Like, honestly, we don't, because it ties up too much, and then it makes. Yeah. I always thought it just would always make the patient's decision based on that instead of like what you actually need. I don't care if it's pre-deed or not. Like, this is what you need.
But then that's just another touch point where now the dentist is directly involved with the insurance, and so it's another thing that the patient goes back to and then blames you for the predetermination as well. So yeah, I mean, honestly, even that should just be something where you should be able to press a button and it's like auto-populating in 5 seconds and it's like you would be covered. Like it.
I think they may have that.
Do they have that?
I think
but then it's not.
Someone's working on
but then
it.
it's non. Then if it's
but
non-binding.
Again, non-binding, it's like, oh, we didn't tell you that.
Yeah.
It's like, thanks.
Well, and there are a lot of companies who are trying to fill that vacuum of insurance verification, but again, that cost gets pushed to the dentist. And you know, it's like I know a whole legion of dentists who don't even have a website still, and it's like, come on, like, don't push this onto the cottage industry. Just let the good old hometown dentist do his thing. Don't bring it in, you know, it's like, get this in, I call it the administrative bloat. Get it off of us, you know, have the insurance company start actually stepping up, because they'll pay somebody, you know, whatever, $7 a day to sit on the phone with us for 4 hours, you know, in a call center, you know, but I can't pay somebody $7 a day to sit on a phone. It's just absurd. And those are things, to me, it's like, there need to be some guardrails at the state and national level, because that does benefit the patient. You know, that is something, and it's not just like, oh, protecting the poor dentist, but, you know, I'm not even going to get started on the concept of fee schedules that are, you know, born and stuck in 1992.
And remember, though, we talked about, so like in between when we recorded with you the first time and this time, we brought on Dante, who's in Canada, right? And he told us...
Dr. Carlaccio.
Yeah, Dante, yeah. See? I'm too casual with everything. Anyways, and he brought that concept how the dental associations are the ones setting the fee schedules, right? Which that seems like a step in the right direction versus letting an insurance company dictate that. So...
But the funny thing is the recommendation. It's not a cap. And that's the coolest part about it, is the dentist, you know, the patient then has the choice to say, hey, I'm going to go to, you know, Dr. Carlaccio because I think he does great work. I really appreciate the time he spends. I have had nothing but great experiences. And then they're not getting an email the next day or a letter the next day saying, you shouldn't go to this out-of-network dentist. You know, that to me is super trash. I mean, it's just frustrating.
Those letters suck. Even when we went from Delta PPO to Premier, Delta's like
they are so quick to send that letter.
No, and we had to prep. Like, it's a thing where it's like, what's a strategy to tell your patients before it's like someone found out information and they're like, you're trying to get ahead of the other guy before they do, because Delta's going to send a letter and it's going to scare all your patients, and now you're in like this 3-month cycle of like trying to answer questions to patients about like I mean, we have lost patients because and they're good patients and they like us and they just say, hey, I have a family of 5 coming in here. I understand why you're taking Delta Premier. I agree. I don't like that my just PPO doesn't let me see everyone, but I can't afford a $300 bill now every time to get cleanings, and it sucks. But you know. Yeah,
I mean that makes sense. But I think it's written in a way where it makes the patient think that you don't take their insurance at all.
Right. Or because like we're the greedy one. Like, it's not like they don't put in the letter like our fees suck so hard that no dentists really want to take it. So they're changing because they need to get paid like at least an okay amount. It's not that at all, right?
It always puts the dentist as the bad guy. So
real quick, If you're into what we're talking about and want more, check out my newsletter, Just 2 Minutes. It's the dental blog you can actually read between patients. No fluff, no BS, just straight up tips, stories, and insights to help you level up. You can subscribe over at coupleofdentists.com or just hit the link in our show notes. Now back to the pod.
Well, and think about those things. Like, think about the absolute burden. I've watched it play out a million times in the forums. Hey, I'm getting ready to drop June 1st or January 1. What do I need to do? How do I tell my patients? And people will be like, well, you've already missed the window. Like, you need to inform them 180 days or something. And it's like, that should be illegal. You should be able to say, here's my 30-day, I'm out, and stop messing with my patients. To me, that has been the most frustrating because, again, it's that bloat. And then credentialing, oh, I just graduated, but my old, the doc I'm working for, I'm filing it under his, and is that illegal? Yes, it's illegal, and I haven't got my credentials back. What do you, for what? Do you have a dental license? Do you have any, malpractice lawsuits active? Yes, no, cool, done.
Oh yeah,
it's a 40-minute exercise.
Is like and it's still paper all the time, right? Like, it's like a 40-page packet.
I filled that out so many freaking
Oh yeah,
times.
like the fact that is such a mess too. I mean that's
credentialing, the whole under whose provider name, what? Yeah.
But the ultimate question is, who do you think that benefits? It doesn't benefit the insurance, it doesn't benefit the patient. It doesn't benefit the dentist. It benefits the insurance company. It's them dragging their heels both directions. Because if all of a sudden they have a provider who's like, I'm leaving, and then they're like, oh, well, we better kind of speed up these credentials for these other cats. It's absolutely always in their favor. And again, the bloated online lists of, oh, I can go here. You look and it's like 42 people registered at one location. It's like, come on. Like, what they're doing is they're trying to sell the illusion that they have a presence in a certain area. And that's all they're doing. I had one of the guys from a company who was trying to get me to join. And so I'd always occasionally send him back a kind of a flippant email. It's like, oh, okay, is your crown fee at $1,300 yet? Or, whatever it is, just to see what he'd say. And I've actually talked to him on the phone. I just kind of tease him a little bit, but not in a mean way, but more of a, hey, I understand you guys are trying to compete in this market. You're trying to get a market share from Cigna, Delta, MetLife. I said, but how are you guys going to win that? And I've talked to him. He's like, well, they do things that we don't agree with. And I was like, oh, tell me more. And I couldn't get any good stuff, real deep stuff out. But like, hey, I'll encourage legislative reform of the dentistry part if you can call out what the competitors are doing to monopolize the market. It's a protection racket. Hey, you're going to sign up with this plan, and we should stop using the term Delta just in general. It's like all of them do this. And it's kind of like, well, if you want to step out of a network, there's something bad might happen,
I'm not
going to say, get your knees bashed in or something.
Well, yeah, it's like when we were watching Tetris. We were watching that movie Tetris on Apple TV, where about like how they got rights to Tetris, and it was like all like late '80s when it was still USSR. And yeah, like some guy would just pull out of a van or a town car or something like that, and just say like, yeah, it's probably advisable that you like leave the country. Like, and just it's just scared stuff. Yeah, it's just like.
But we all live in that fear. We live in that fear that the patients are going to go somewhere else. And I'm like I said, I'm out of network with everything, but it's like every dentist has that idea that they don't want to just get, nobody likes patients leaving, unless it's a patient who's been absolutely a terror. But they feed off of our fear and our worry, and then it's like, no, but guess what? We'll probably up reimbursement next year.
Yeah.
And then what you get like,
Yeah.
And then now it's like you're $4 more for a crown.
No, it's not $4 more for a crown. It's $4 more for like an amalgam filling that you don't ever do. So it's like,
look what we did. We gave you this.
Yeah, we increased this, and now everything's downgraded. So all your composites are downgraded to amalgams, but we increased the amalgam fee $4. So that.
Well. So this is exactly right. So when I think of my wish list of things, it's these legislative pushes, but the ADA needs to lead the charge on education to these people who are purchasing these policies, whether it's the HR department or the husband and wife who are small business owners who don't have great access to, clout. They got to go buy this stuff on the open market for their kids. And we need to flip the Overton window way over to our side and go above and beyond to influence the public in a more positive way. If Delta is going to throw their name on things, well, I don't want the ADA to throw their name on everything, but I do want them to start communicating to improve patients so that they know how to get good coverage, so they know what to expect and what they should not put up with. And take this blame off of us, the dentists, I just want to do dentistry. We all just want to do dentistry or enjoy other enterprises within our community. But the larger concept is who do we go to make these changes? And it's still the ADA. I will throw a bone out there to a few people who have done a huge job of rallying, effort. And it's not just to say, oh, just go out and network. That's not the answer clearly for everybody. But I know Bob DeConchi, Bob D, as people know him, he spends a ton of his time trying to get these influential positions reformed within the structure given. ADA, and even at the state level, I was reaching out to my trustee, and and I would say, hey, what are we doing about it? What are your thoughts on this? And kind of a, hey, put him on the spot kind of thing. And he would always end his conversation with, so are you going to go to the House of Delegates meeting? And I'm like, dude, I have 5 kids. I don't really want to go to French Lick, Indiana for 3 days. I don't have time for this, And again, like Alex and Eric, you guys were both referencing the idea of where do these things need to be adjudicated? Where do we need to discuss this? Does the ADA need to get on and create a Facebook group? I'd love that. I would love an ADA monitored Facebook group where we could absolutely just unload this stuff and have some accountability. Find things out. Where's our money going? What are we doing legislatively? At what states are we seeing improvements? Don't tell me about value-based care. Don't tell me that I can get that deal on the Volvo XC30 or wwhatever it is. That's a bad look. Don't take pictures with other, and I don't know.
So what are your thoughts on, because there is a new president right now, is he a little bit more aligned with that type of, like, it's not really even forward thinking, but it's just like thinking, I guess.
I think that he sees dental insurance as antiquated and not a systemic look the way that we're taught. Dentistry, we're taught, is a systemic. There's a massive correlation to the rest of the body and health. And I think he's trying to see it that way as well. Again, I've never gotten many details on what he sees as a reform to how we, to care for patients and get reimbursed. But it feels like he has a more medical health insurance perspective. But I just don't know what the end point is. If you have a president who's got a year, they usually have a pet project, and he's been really good about health and fitness of, addiction issues and well-being. And so he's had a really big push on that, but it's like, I don't know how much he's going to get done, if anything, as he finishes up his term in not too long from now. But I think his heart's in the right place. I just don't know if we're going to see anything happen under his term. So it's like on to the next. Who's president-elect, and what are their thoughts? Are we going to get anything? And I just don't know, because even with Dr. Kessler as the current ADA president, his push for well-being and fighting addiction issues is a huge thing in mental health. But the biggest thing that causes some of this stress that drives us to needing this care, are the insurance companies, are the failure to protect the profession. And it's not a recent thing. It's been sliding for 30 years or more, 40 years. So I don't know. I don't know what his next push will be, but I just wish there was an easy way other than me working my way up into the state ranks and the national ranks to actually then make a vote. Nobody has time for the congressional mechanics. It's really frustrating, because there are much better ways we can communicate, and they just haven't done that.
I mean, it seems like we kind of started on, like, what does the ADA do? Or is it still like a thing? And it seems like a lot of the problems that at least you feel like kind of just stem from either them being antiquated in some stuff, but a lot of it just plays back to like insurance, right? I feel like we took a good turn on how that's probably even a bigger problem within dentistry and how it's set up.
Yeah. Well, and the biggest complaint in insurance companies are watching us fight rising labor. And we're like, oh no, I can't get a hygienist, or oh, my hygienist wants this or that. And we're sitting here and it's like, it's not just hygiene wages that have gone up. It's gone across nationally in the past 5 years. It's skyrocketed for every single job. You drive by some McDonald's and it's like starting at 17 an hour. What? Like, so, you're not picking up assistants in that ballpark. You've got wages on every occupation have skyrocketed. And we're sitting here feeling the pinch because our pro-free reimbursements, $52 and our hygienist wants $70 or whatever, the fight is not, I'm not going to sit here and be like, well, the hygienists are wrong. They need to know their place. And it's, yes, some of these things are just shocking. But if our reimbursements were matching pace over the past 20 years, it wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, exactly.
We wouldn't have a problem staffing.
Yeah. And then it ends up, and like you said, at the end of the day, the person that hurts the most is the patient, because then you can't hire a hygienist, or you don't want to, and then now you're booked out 3 or 4 months for hygiene, and then people aren't getting the care they need. So like it just hurts the person, and then it hurts. And then it hurts them more, because then what happens is they didn't get their hygiene checked, or they didn't get their exam as frequently. Now potentially they have a new spot that's a decay, or they need a crown or need something, and then now insurance is gonna bloat it and then deny it, and then the patient now has to pay even more money, and then like they just keep on getting hurt over and over and over again. So it is this cycle, right? I'm kind of seeing that.
Well, and that's exactly right, because then if you're like, oh, value-based care, it's like, no, if you really care about the patient, ADA insurance, if you're listening, if you care about the patient, you want to have a mechanism that steps up so we can actually, provide care. It doesn't matter if you're focusing on the care of the patient or not. If we aren't physically able, if the workforce isn't there, that's why the ADA is pushing for the idea that, hey, maybe we can have foreign trained dentists, get quick licensure for RDH, or not, I guess it wouldn't be called RDH, but maybe what can we do to alleviate? So the ADA is starting and trying, but the ADA cannot, unilaterally pass legislation. They actually have to just give a recommendation and then send our lobbyists to knock on the doors in the Capitol buildings. And and people have to understand that the ADA does not set these rules. The ADA recommends these rules. I think, like we talked about, the process of getting these rules up is antiquated. You got to go through the House of Delegates. You got to do all these things. And it's like, we don't have time for that. I don't have time for that. Some people do, but gone are the days of people joining committees and things out of the noble concept. Some people do it because they just love the idea of it, but not as many as it used to be. So, and so participation, it's like, maybe, if people don't want to join the tripartite, don't do it. That's fine. But reach out and find out who runs the PAC for your state. Find out who runs, the Indiana Dental Association Political Action Committee. Give me that name. Find out, reach out, get the email of the lobbyist and say you'll donate $50. Just try it. You don't have to be you don't have to be a member. But if you don't want to sign up for the memberships of everything, you can at least support the legislative efforts, and the state and the ADA need to communicate better. Because we're sitting out a legislative cycle right now because we spent all our political capital pushing for AOB, assignment of benefits, which does nothing for me. And it's like, what an absolute goose egg. I'm sorry. It also took us 15 years to do it, or 12 years to do it. And it's like, that was our big win. It's like, no, it was not.
So pretty much someone needs to go out there, create this group, create a Facebook group, start like a GoFundMe page, and get some shit done.
Yeah.
Get some shit done. Yes. So bring in whoever with the chainsaw, that kind of thing.
Yeah, right. Well, cool. I think I think that's a good spot to wrap it up. Thanks for kind of helping us understand that. Now I'm going to donate to the ADA.
No, you're not.
No, probably. But I get it. Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for coming on.